Hi, this is Mr. Snyder, and I am using this app, an extension of Chrome, which I hope you guys can use. It's called Screencastify, and you can record up to 5 minutes with using Screencastify, and you can have your video embedded, or you could choose not to. And you can also move this around as I show you, and then you can hide this bar, and instead of pressing stop sharing there, you can press the stop button over here when you're done. Okay, anyway, the element I'm introducing to you is molybdenum. It is number 42 on the periodic table, which means that's its atomic number, and it has 42 protons. The symbol is capital M, lowercase o, and it's found here, which means it is a transitional metal. It was discovered by this guy, Carl Wilhelm Scheele, who was part Swedish, part German, and he lived in Germany. He worked as a chemist. He also discovered oxygen, hydrogen, barium, tungsten, and chlorine. So, he had quite a productive life. This is what molybdenum looks like. Very bright, shiny metal. Well, in 1915, someone in the German army, a scientist in the German army, found a use for molybdenum. And it was in these big guns called Big Berthas. These guns were 43 tons, 86,000 pounds. The shells that they would shoot at were 2,200 pounds. The barrel here is 20 feet long, and these bullets or shells could go for 9 miles. And they're mostly pointed at the French. Well, the trouble with these howitzers originally was they were made out of steel, and it's 90% iron. The trouble is, iron has a melting point of 2,800 degrees Fahrenheit. And when you blast out these big shells, you need a lot of gunpowder, and that produces a lot of heat. And after one or two blasts, these barrels would get so hot they would start to warp. And they were only good for a few days, the howitzers were, or the Big Berthas. And after that, they were really useless. So there was a lot of money and time spent on these, and then they couldn't be used for very long. Well, along comes molybdenum, much to the dismay of the French, and molybdenum added to this alloy of steel created a melting point of 4,750 degrees Fahrenheit. And when the shells were blasted out, there was no warping, so they could be used indefinitely. Well, this was the use for molybdenum until 1919, when the war ended. After that, there really wasn't much use for them. And interesting backstory behind this was the one place to get molybdenum was in the Rocky Mountains at this mountain called Bartlett Mountain. The mine is called Climax Mine now, and this is a picture of it recently. Anyway, Otis King was running this mine and figured out a way to get the molybdenum out, separated from everything else. And along came the Germans in 1916, figuring out where it came from, and they tried to harass him, threaten him, even kill him. And they almost did, but they didn't. And they basically forced him to sell to them. And and then they had sole access to the molybdenum for their purposes, which were the guns. Well, when 1919 came and the war was over, there was really no use, and they lost their source of income, and they foreclosed on this. Otis King was able to get it back, and then he convinced Henry Ford to use molybdenum in the engines of the cars that he was building. And he did, and Otis King became a millionaire. And that is one of the uses of molybdenum. I'm sure there are more, but that's the one that I discovered and learned about. And I also learned that the name Big Bertha, there was a cow in Ireland that lived for 49 years and was very big and had a lot of babies. They named it Big Bertha after the howitzer.